Welcome, everyone, to our series of interviews where Healthcare Scene sits down with top leaders in healthcare IT. My name is John Lynn. I'm the founder of healthcarescene.com, a network of leading healthcare IT resources. We have over 11,000 blog posts. We have job board with, I think we have 26,000 registered users of health IT professionals that post to our job board. We have a health IT marketing conference you can check out. And also, we are about to launch a new health IT conference. Watch for news for that at healthcarescene.com. But enough about me. I also want to mention for this interview today on patient engagement and also collaborative care, we're excited to have Intel Health sponsoring us. So thank you so much to Intel for sponsoring this interview.
Man has been fighting disease forever, but the future is bringing a new weapon to the fight: genomic data. Sequencing the first human genome took 13 years and cost $2.7 billion. Soon it will be approaching $100. For cancer patients, genomic sequencing allows doctors to identify and attack defects in cancer genes. They can design targeted treatments that strike the cancer while leaving healthy cells unharmed. The fight is on, but the data is winning, and the future is just getting started.
Now, without further ado, we want to introduce our special guest. His name is Drex DeFord. He's the president of Drexio Digital Health, which is just like, what a great name, Drexio. He's a former CIO at 4 health systems. He's on a number of health IT boards. He's an all-around leader in healthcare IT with over 30 years experience. Is there anything you haven't done, Drex, in healthcare IT?
Yeah, no, it's definitely been an interesting career and a great experience. And thanks for having me today. I think hopefully we'll have a lot of fun and have a good conversation about a lot of different topics.
Well, yeah, this is why we have to have you on these interviews, right? To share all this knowledge. So, given that lengthy history and experience in healthcare, kind of tell us how is patient engagement and collaborative care really changed? Maybe not over the full 30 years, maybe even just the past 10 years, as far as, how far has it come? What's the expectation now versus what it was before?
Right. So I think some of this certainly goes back to the sick care versus the transition to real health care that we've been going through for the past 10 years. Some health systems obviously are way ahead on this. A lot of them are way behind. I always look at this, and so it's hard to sort of take one piece of this out and say that it's separate from any other piece. When I think about patient engagement, I think about coordination of care. I also think about things like this is population health. This is the transition from fee-for-service to fee-for-value, or taking risk for patients, a population of patients. All of that kind of goes hand in hand. And I think we've really seen that transition from fee-for-service to fee-for-value happen significantly over the last 10 years. And I have a slide. My brain works in analogies, so you'll have to bear with me because I will mix these analogies and metaphors as I go through here. But I have a slide where I have a cow that's halfway over a fence and he's stuck and can't get over the fence, or she can't get over the fence. And I think in a lot of ways, that's kind of the transition from fee-for-service to fee-for-value. Most health systems are halfway over. They don't want to leave fee-for-service because that's the way we've always done things in the past. The grass looks greener on the other side, but maybe not. And so I see all of this kind of coming together as we look at patient engagement and care coordination and how things have changed over the past 10 years. To me, there's no doubt the cow's going over the fence. It's just a matter of when and how painful the trip turns out to be to get over the fence.
So, that was the question I was going to follow up with is, is all of this discussion, and we see a lot of hype and discussion around the shift to value-based care and the changing reimbursement models. Is this something that hospital CIOs really are concerning themselves with? Or is this something that we're talking a lot about, but it's really not impacting the decisions they make today?
Yeah, well, I think it depends. it depends on how far your health system is in going over the fence. For most health systems now, I would say there is at least a small population that they are at risk for. Some significant, but some at least have started on the journey. And as a CIO, as working with a lot of the CIOs around the country, I think any place where there's the patients that you've taken that risk posture with, there's a lot to learn. And so I think they do concern themselves about it. I think now more than ever, they're really being clear, and they really understand that it really is people process technology that ultimately is going to be able to facilitate value-based care to be accomplished. And I think they're also becoming more and more clear on the reality that it's a people-based business, and the technology is important, but the real success comes in the adjustment of the processes and the people that are involved. And the technology is really just a facilitator for kind of a new model of care that health systems across the country are ultimately going to adopt.
That's interesting you say that, because I like that people, process, technology. That's a good framework. But when you look at patient engagement and collaborative care, which is kind of the topic for this discussion, that doesn't necessarily indicate technology at all. I mean, it certainly, technology is used in a lot of those things and facilitates a lot of the opportunities that we have. But you could have collaborative care even without technology. It would be a challenge, and it's not as you can't scale it up and things. But it's interesting, that balance. That really it's about focusing on the patient and their needs and the care that they need, and maybe that's where our technology needs to go, rather than just automating some processes.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. To go back to the cow analogy, maybe. We talk about paving the cow path from time to time, right? And how technology sometimes is used to pave that cow path. So you have this reality that I think over time, a lot of technologists have made the mistake of saying, let's take an existing process and let's automate it. And what really happens in that many times is that since the people in the process involved isn't very clear, or it's not been very leaned out, to use a Toyota Production Systems term, that you take a train wreck of a people in process piece, and by inserting technology, you make it a really fast and efficient train wreck, which is not what we're supposed to be doing at all. That's actually a terrible idea. So when you think about how to go back and focus on the people and process part, I mean, coordinated care, 10 years ago at integrated delivery networks, a lot of the coordinated care, again, to your point about patients, was about making sure that the patient, once they entered the system, had a reasonably good experience getting from the doctor's office into the hospital, scheduled for surgery, out of surgery into the inpatient unit, and then being discharged, and then coming back for PT, and then back to their family practice doc, and making sure everything's squared away. And then we put them back into the game of life, right? I think in the sort of modern version of coordinated care, it's a bit more complicated, because when you're at risk for patients, when you're doing value-based care, you're really thinking a lot more about the patient while they're in the game, before they ever show up to the hospital or to the doctor's office. I want to make sure that they are doing things that are the right things to keep them healthy, to keep them out of the emergency department, and certainly keep them out of the inpatient unit. Of course, accidents are going to happen, and people are going to have heart attacks, and cars are going to run into each other and things like that. But generally speaking, I want to make sure that I'm having good, regular conversations with those patients to make sure that they stay healthy. And that's a whole different people process world than the one we were living in 10 years ago. And so the technology, as part of that, also has to change.
Yeah, I mean, you made such good points. Your first point reminded me of our friend Shahid Shah, who said, making stupid faster isn't a good approach, right?
No, that's not the business that we're in. That should not be the business that we're in. But a lot of us out there, both I think health information technology folks, CIOs, information services people, but also our partners and our customers, the patients, all have scars from where we've made those mistakes. So as important as anything else today is probably not making those same kind of mistakes over and over again.
That's great. But I think the second part of what you said is what I think a lot of people miss in these implementations, and that is that if you just digitize your current experience, then you're not taking into account that the world has changed and that there's a world of opportunity available to you in a digital world that wasn't possible in the paper world. And I think that includes things like patient engagement and collaborative care. I mean, the ability to engage the patient in a technology world is 1,000 times easier than it was in the paper world, where your biggest tool was the phone or a letter to them, right?
Yeah.
Like, if we try to digitize that phone and letter process, then we're going to miss out on all the opportunity to really engage the patient in a meaningful way. Excuse the use of the word meaningful, that actually improves care. And so I think that's kind of what you're describing, right? Is that you can't just digitize a process when there's all this new opportunity and, quite frankly, new regulation that requires so much more.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I think, again, back to the cow path, trying to pave the cow path is probably the wrong thing. I'm also a big Toyota Production Systems guy. I'm a big lean believer in lean methodology kind of operator. I always did it as much as I could when I was in the military. I certainly tried to do it inside my department at Scripps. When I went to Seattle Children's, it's a big reason that I went to Seattle Children's is that Seattle Children's was a lean leader, and really lean and Toyota Production Systems were sort of the key to the operation about how decisions were made at Seattle Children's during the time I was there. I've lived in Japan for 3.5 years. I've been back since to spend time with Toyota and Yamaha Piano and several other companies there studying lean. And this idea of not accepting what you have as the process, but envisioning the process that you really want and then trying to create a map that says, how do I get from here to there? Understanding that it's not going to be one leap, and chances are really good if you think of that people process technology idea as a machine with 3 handles, it's not going to be solved by grabbing the technology handle and just leaning back into it, pulling that handle back as hard as you can. It really is going to be, for most places, an incremental and thoughtful, well-designed process to move from where you are to where you want to be as far as people and process changes, and then the technology to facilitate that. The other great thing that, given the business that we're in, the other great thing that we have as an advantage is that we have to rethink this over and over and over again as we go through it, because technology continues to grow and change and advance over time. So we have this great chance to be able to say, we didn't think we could do X when we looked at this 6 months ago, but now because of a new capability that exists, I think we can actually change that process even more than we originally thought.
Let's talk a little more practical. What are the things that need to change? What's the culture change that needs to happen at these organizations? Do you have some specific examples where maybe before the use of technology, they didn't engage the patient, they didn't engage in collaborative care, and that now you see hospitals starting to do this type of things?
I think the CIO of the future probably isn't a technologist at all. It probably is somebody who's way more focused on process development and execution, and maybe lean technologies or lean processes and the technologies that can go along with them. They're very often focused on this idea that the culture has to change in a way that really puts, it sounds cliche, but puts the patient at the center. I think from my perspective, some of the things that I've seen too are that, and I've always talked to my teams about it in this way, our patients are our customers in the end. I think our patients are our customers. Yep. That means that it's impossible for our doctors and nurses and radiologists and pharmacy people in our hospital to be our customers. Those people are our partners to be engaged in the provision of great care to our patients and families who are our customers. And I think that simple culture change, it sounds simple when I say it out loud, but in fact, it's very challenging sometimes. Every place that I've been, and I've kind of gone into this conversation, when you go into a auditorium full of physicians and you say that exact thing, you're not my customer. You're my partner to be engaged in the provision of great care to our patients and families. That's our customer. That can get quite an uproar. But when you really start to help them understand that when I say that, what I really mean is that part of my job is to not let you grab a hold of the technology handle and pull back on it vigorously. It is to help you do the right thing and help guide you to process changes that you may not see because you're too close to them. And I think when you start to think about how we're going to operate in a value-based care environment, we also have to think about it. Earlier I talked about we used to treat patients and then put them back into the game of life. It really is what's happening during the game of life. We have to focus on all kinds of other things now, other social determinants that don't have anything to do with what we've normally delivered in healthcare. And so that means we have to be connected to social services in a way that maybe we never really have been before. We have to be connected maybe to the school lunch program in ways that we never have been before. We have to be able to look at all of those things and big places where we have big gaps now, I think, in our healthcare system around particularly mental health.
So looking at that, what are some of the technologies you kind of espouse that you think are really moving the needle and changing the culture to more of a collaborative one or a patient-centered one, if you want to use your cliche term? Are you a proponent of the portal, as one that opens the doors? Are you a proponent of telehealth or even maybe home health care, talking about the discharge of the patients and connecting to them in their homes and understanding them? What are some of those patient engagement collaborative care technologies that you think are really moving the needle and that CIOs should be involved in?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because there's a lot of different stuff depending on where you are that can help change the culture and move the needle. So, I mean, I guess first of all, I would start with something really simple like mobile as an overall concept, and just talk about and think about mobile everything. So whether it's inside your organization, you need to have EHRs be mobile and portable. I don't want to go to a PC and have to wait 7 minutes for PC to boot up and the patches to load and then the EHR to come online. This is a thing I need to be able to carry around as a provider and be comfortable with it. You take that mobile concept out to the patients, then certainly things like, you watch Apple Health Kit and the stuff that's going on there. One of the things that I've been working on the last couple of years is with Cedars-Sinai and the Healthcare Accelerator. And Cedars has specifically put a lot of time and effort into bringing in young, early startup companies that have some really cool ideas around a lot of these things. How do they help? And so from the mobile perspective, there's a company right now that they're supporting that actually in Epic, the doc can put in an order and the order kicks out an order to this startup partner, who takes things like an Apple Watch or a blood pressure cuff or a IoT scale and puts them in a nice box and ships them off to the patient and helps make sure the patient can get everything installed and that they all work. And then they wind up taking the data from that and repackaging it and sending it back to the folks at Cedars so that the doctor can see what the doc needs to see and wants to see from a population health, value-based care perspective. I don't want to see all the data. I mean, I walked into my family physician the other day and told him that I wear a Garmin and I have all this data. And I mean, I got the response that you always expect to get, and that is, I don't really know what to do with that. I don't have a place for it, and I can't do anything with it. But in the Cedars scenario, with the startup, what the doc gets back is kind of the basic stuff that the doc really wants to know. Weight is level, blood pressure is stable. They're hitting their 10,000 steps 3 times a week. The kinds of things that they need to make sure that the patient is being compliant with the coaching that they've given them. And not all patients get it. It's patients with specific chronic diseases. They have a protocol that they've laid out. So mobile is certainly one. But then I look at other things like integration and interoperability and the ability to be able to exchange patients' records between organizations is still a huge challenge for us, and it may be for a while. It's such a challenge that I know in some markets I see health systems actually converting to, for example, Epic, because Epic in some markets has become more valuable because of its HIE capability, or as valuable because of its HIE capability as it is as in an electronic health record. Mm. Because that data can be shared back and forth easily. And then, the other thing technology-wise, I think, is analytics and changing the culture with analytics. You really have to be able to pull that data and deliver it to providers in a way that, and population health managers in a way that helps to make sure they can do the things they need to do. Intercept the pass before the patient, crosses the line and winds up in the ED, or before the patient really gets sick and winds up being admitted to the hospital. I'm convinced that there's a day in the future with value-based care when a patient's going to show up and be admitted to the hospital, and the outburst is going to be, how did this patient get in the hospital? There are supposed to be no patients in the hospital. And I think we're a long way from that, right? But I think if we do the analytics right, we get a lot closer to this idea that we can keep healthy patients healthy, and we can give chronic patients as near to a fully healthy life experience better than we ever have before. And for patients who are actually sick, we can find them earlier in their disease state, bring them in, put them in the hospital if we need to, treat them properly, and move them back out into a state where we can monitor and manage them as chronic but healthy patients. And that's really kind of the business that I think we're in, or we're all going to be in pretty soon.
Well, and looking at that vision, it's interesting. You started with a kind of this home healthcare kit in a box. You kind of described shipping a box of home health appliances and solutions in a package. And then you described that the doctor didn't want all of that information when you brought it in yourself, that it needs to be created into kind of a patient report card almost of their health. And then you take it the next level of analytics, which means, we need to be so good at that data that we know that patient shouldn't be in the hospital, right as they come in, or that they should, right?
Right.
Right now the doctors don't even want that data. And you're describing a vision of that we need to get to the point where not only do we want that data, but we demand that data. And maybe we don't even see you in the hospital if we don't have that data, because we don't want to be liable for something we don't know when we know you have that data available to us, right?
Yeah, I think as I look at it, I think there's part of the other challenge in all of this too will be, how do we take the data that we get, not only from the patients, but from maybe other outside agencies that the patients are interacting with, maybe even businesses and other elements of daily life that the patient's interacting with? And how do we get that into the population health manager's normal daily workflow and the provider's normal daily workflow, so that they don't think about it as something else? It shouldn't be an interruption to their daily work. And that today, that means I have to sort of figure out, how am I going to get that into the electronic health record for providers, so that as they are treating patients and looking at follow-up and lab test results and other things, there's also a way for them to keep tabs on patients that maybe they haven't seen for a while, but they're interested in. And they've just forgotten that they're interested in them because the patient hasn't been back for a while, but they need to stay in touch. And so figuring out how you do analytics well, I also am a huge fan of data visualization. I'm a Tufty, guy. I love data viz. If you can do it right, it's an amazing thing. How do you take that kind of stuff and make sure you are putting it in the right place at the right time for the consumer of that data, so that they can do the right thing easily and it becomes difficult for them to justify doing the wrong thing? Now, when I talk about that with providers, the same thing really applies with patients. And what's the right way to do that? I'm working with startups that are building bots, that are talking to patients, that are coaching them, through their day, helping them make appointments when they need to make appointments, reminding them that if they were in the emergency department, that maybe there's other better ways for them to receive treatments right in their neighborhood instead of driving all the way to the hospital. All those kinds of things. If you can do the analytics and deliver the data to the patient in a way that they want it, and the provider in a way that they want it, in a way that they will use it as part of their normal daily workflow, and it's not something else extra that I have to do, then I'm way more likely to consume it and use it in the way that you intended. That sounds easy. I know it's really difficult to pull off.
Well, and I think it's interesting you brought up bots, and you talked even about the kind of population health, the care manager approach, because a lot of doctors don't want to participate in this, but I don't know if we even necessarily need it. I think we need a whole group of people. I mean, that's why it's called collaborative care. And how likely do you think bots are going to be part of that collaborative care model?
Yeah, that's an interesting idea too. Healthcare, again, I think it's always been a team sport, but I think it becomes more of a very well coordinated and managed team sport in the future, better than it's ever been managed and coordinated before. I think of bots and the work that bots can do on behalf of providers and in support of patients as there may be portions of an assembly line that are completely hands off, right? Completely automated, because the manufacturer has done a really great job of looking at the people that is involved in that part of the manufacturing, and they've figured out how to lean it out within an inch of its life. And then they've made the decision to do a technology insertion to automate that part of the line, to insert a bot or a whatever, to make that part of the process now almost mistake proof, that when you finally have it down to the point where it can work and make fewer mistakes than a human, and you really have that process leaned out, that's the time to really, really consider about making those big technology investments. And so when I look at bots, and I guess I kind of use the term bots as a much more of an automation kind of strategy or ideal. But when you use bots in the right way, I think you can take the burden off of providers for things that they find routine and mundane, to let them spend more time thinking about the really hard, complicated, the art part of the art of medicine, as opposed to the routine part of medicine. And I think the same thing with patients. They want to be healthy, but they also need to live their lives, and they have things that they want to do. So if we can use bots to help remind them of when to take their medicine, and based on their movements for that day, notify someone that maybe something isn't exactly right. And healthcare is a team sport, and the team is the provider, it's the patient, and it's the family.
I think you described the value of bots really well, in that they're going to replace the mundane and routine, and every doctor and nurse and care manager and every person in the health system that I know welcomes that with open arms. I would be much more aggressive and say bots are going to be part of the future. You can either embrace it and be part of it and learn how to have it help you help your life. Certainly there will be some struggles along the way as we refine the algorithms, but they're going to be part of it. I see just this week I've gotten, in fact, maybe a week and a half, I've had 3 different companies show me bot implementations that are super interesting and are nearly there where you could put them into production. Some cases where you broadened it all the way even to the reminder system. That's already there and basically ready to implement. It's just waiting for the right partners to come together. So I guess I'd be more aggressive with my bot prediction.
I think, and this is the thing, and I know we follow each other on Twitter. I tweet a lot about artificial intelligence, and I tweet a lot about bots, and I get some grief about tweeting about artificial intelligence because it's overhyped right now, right? Everything is artificial intelligence, but I also have spent a lot of time the last two and a half years reading and understanding, I think, artificial intelligence a bit more than maybe the average person does. And for me, some of this ultimately comes back to the idea that once you're using it, it's no longer the idea of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is always something that it feels like we're never really going to get to, and so it's always overhyped, and we're never really going to be able to do that. And bots fit into that category. And so when I'm working with companies like Well app, and the bots that they build for appointment reminders, and for, hey, we're running a little bit behind in the clinic, here's a Starbucks gift card. That engagement with patients that a human could do, but sometimes it's just, it's probably more reliable and more convenient for a bot to work on those things and to do the right thing, because there's algorithms for all that. We can figure out what that process should be. We can figure out how we want to actually be with our customers. You're not going to get it perfect, but there's a lot of those things that are kind of rote things, and you can make those things happen once you have the process down. Yep. Automating it, whatever that is actually some kind of a bot. Right?
Well, and humans
maybe we're talking semantics, but I still kind of feel like I think there are a lot of things that we could automate, but we shouldn't automate for the sake of automation. We should lean the processes out within an inch of their life, and then have a conversation about what part of that process should we automate to make life easier for everybody involved, and more consistent for everybody involved, and easier to do the right thing for everybody involved.
Yep, definitely. I think that's a good approach. So, we're up against the clock, but I wanted to finish kind of with one question. If you were advising a CIO today on patient engagement and collaborative care, what is one thing you would kind of advise them that they should do now to prepare for, or even start doing, as far as engaging with their patient or improving the care that the patient receives? What's the one thing that's like, if you're not doing this, you should be working on it?
Yeah, wow. One. Do I have to be limited to one?
Well, you can answer however you want, but.
So I think you kind of start with the magic few words there, right? It is about patient engagement. So as a CIO, if you're not involved with they go by a bunch of different names, but if you're not involved in the committee of patients that are seen at your facility and seen in your organization, if you're not spending time with patients and learning from patients, those are the customers. And I know we think sometimes we're the customer too, because we're patients too, so we know how the system works. And trust me, if you work in healthcare and you get healthcare, your experience getting healthcare is significantly different than somebody who doesn't work in healthcare and their experience trying to get healthcare. You need to go and spend time with them and learn from them. Where are the booby traps? Where's their pain? What are they struggling with? So that would be kind of the first thing. And I think that means that for a lot of CIOs and a lot of people in healthcare in general, maybe, one of the things I talk about all the time is getting comfortable with your uncomfortableness, putting yourself in those situations that aren't comfortable for you, that mean that you have an opportunity to learn and make mistakes and get up and dust yourself off and go at it again. Those are great experiences, and those are things that you should intentionally put yourself in those positions, not only you, but your staff and your teams in general in those positions, so that they can learn. And as we go over the fence, that means dragging people out of the fee-for-service world to have a lot more conversations and a lot more face time in the value-based care environment, so that you can see and learn and understand what's going to work and what's not going to work there. Don't be afraid to talk to your peers, go to other places, do site visits, do all the stuff that you can. So learn constantly, and whatever you learn, teach, share with other people. That's a critical part of the operation too. And then again, I go back to people, process, technology. Relationships are a key to the operation, and relationships with your partners. Remember, your partners to be engaged in the provision of great healthcare to your patients and families, your customers. All of those relationships are key to success for CIOs and healthcare executives, I think, in general, as we look into the future.
Excellent. So I think you actually did describe one thing. And if I were summarizing what you said, I think what you're saying is change the culture of your organization to be focused on the patient. And if you do that, you'll do everything that you described, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great summary, John.
So if you change that culture, then you're going to be ready to know, okay, this technology will solve our cultural problems or our patients' problems.
Yeah.
So anyway,
it's something you can't do on your own either. I mean, it really does. It is a team sport in all these things, and so it is making sure that you're spending time with your chief medical officer and your chief financial officer and your supply chain guy and the folks who run medical equipment, and creating this situation that allows the culture change to happen, because it won't just happen on its own. I mean, people, we love to do what we've always done. I wrote something several months ago about healthcare's antibodies to change. We don't like to change. We maybe don't like to change more than any other industry that I've ever seen or been involved in. So change has to happen as a deliberate thing. We've got to make it happen, or it won't.
Great way to finish it. So thanks so much for all your advice and insights into a challenging topic. And I think change maybe is the right way to end it, as we think about all the change that's required to really engage patients and really collaborate in their care. So thanks so much to everyone that watched this video. You can check out more great content at healthcarescene.com. And also a big thank you to our sponsor, Intel, for sponsoring this interview and a number of other interviews. So thanks again to our special guest, Drex DeFord, president of Drexio Digital Health. Thanks, Drex.
Thanks, guys.